I heard a thud, and when I looked, this man who was, I don't know if he was black or Latino, he had fallen, his face was kind of merged with the floor, and he started shaking all over. He was having a grand mal seizure. And I have some experience with grand mal seizures, and I was trying to debate, should I do something, there were police there, should I tell them something? But they seemed to be in control, so I held back. I started dozing off again. And when I woke again, the man had stopped having the seizure, but he was unconscious. He was completely unconscious. The police had rolled him over. He was as if lifeless. And I was looking, I was kind of concerned because that seems to be unusual. Usually you regain consciousness after you have a seizure like that. I started dozing off again slightly, and a policeman told me to leave. Oh, no, what happened was I was looking, an electric defibrillator was brought in for him. There were EMT people there, quite a large crowd of police and EMT. And I was looking, and there was a defibrillator there. They put on the white patches on the man's chest. And so I was expecting to see electrodes and, the usual clamps or whatever they are that create a jolt. But that didn't happen. It was just the patches and nothing. And the man was lying there. And I was looking, I was thinking, I was still half asleep, and I was thinking, there's something strange here. And a policeman came over to me and made me leave. And I thought, all right, all the homeless people are now leaving the area. This is the last row of the LIRR waiting room, as I said. So anyway, I just got up, and half asleep, I walked out. But I'm suddenly noticing nobody else is being asked to leave. I'm the only one who's being, and there are a lot of homeless people there who were out cold. They were sleeping, or they were awake, but there were a lot of homeless people there. So I get outside, and then about 3 minutes later, all the homeless people were made to leave, and all the travelers and so on. Everyone had to clear the area. Meanwhile, a barrier was put up, a kind of orange barrier outside the waiting room. And I'm looking at what's going on with the guy. I was very concerned because the guy, if he's black or Latino and homeless, and he's in a medical emergency, this is a crisis. There's something to be worried about. I mean, anybody who knows about I've known a lot of homeless people in hospitals who have had terrible, terrible, terrible ordeals just by virtue of the fact that they were minorities and also homeless. So I'm looking, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. A police officer meanwhile, I had to go to the bathroom, but I was kind of waiting to see, are they going to use the electric defibrillator? They never used it. So some other policeman comes up to me. I'll just describe the way it was. There was a barrier. Here's the ladies' room. Here's the men's room. The paths to those bathrooms were clear. There were a couple of women standing to my right, closer to the path to the ladies' room. The policeman comes up to me and says, "You have to leave here." The other homeless people who had gotten out of the room were standing a few yards to my rear. And I said, I didn't say anything. I said, well, I have to go to the bathroom. He said, no, you don't. And I said, yes, I do. And I just went into the bathroom. And he said something about watching the show. And normally, I was behaving in a way on that evening differently from the way I normally do. Normally, if the police tell me something, I listen to them immediately because I don't want any problems with them. I have never been arrested. I've never really had any major problems with the police. And the police at the station, I have generally had a very good rapport with. But this night, I don't know what it was, an accumulation of sleeplessness, and there was something wrong with what I was looking at. I felt very upset. I came back out and I thought, I want to see what's going on with this person. And I'm looking, and somebody's applying some kind of balloon-like thing, which was clearly not a defibrillator. I didn't know what it was, but it was clearly not a defibrillator. The guy was still out cold. And there were all these EMT people there, and nothing seemed to be being done. The policeman said, you have to get out of here, leave. And I said, why? He said, because you're blocking the path to the ladies' room. And I said, no, I'm not. I was right in the middle. There was no blockage at all. He said, yes, you are. And there were, as I said, a couple of women to my right. At this point, they left. I don't know where they went, whether they went to the ladies' room or left. But he never said anything to them. I turned around to the people. At this point, I started getting nervous. I turned around to the homeless people who were a few yards behind me. I wanted to make a lot of noise because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I wanted everyone to know what was going on. So I said to them in a very loud voice, am I blocking the path to the ladies' room? So a few homeless people who were looking and seeing what's going on, they shook their heads like that. And then he said to me, if you don't leave here, you're going to be arrested. And I said, on what charge? And he said, disorderly conduct. And I turned around to the same homeless people and I said, am I engaged in disorderly conduct? And I made it very clear, because Rob was there. Rob is one of our members. He was standing there. I wanted him to know what was going on. And he kind of looked, and I knew that he knew what was going on, but he didn't, he just stayed there. He stayed back. So at that point, he grabbed my arms, twisted one of my arms back, threw me onto the escalator. I went to the top, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning, by the way. And at the top, I said to myself, am I going to leave the station? I really should leave the station. I think I'll leave the station. And I found myself going back downstairs to the same place. I said to myself, I've got to leave the station. This is ridiculous. I went, and my body said, no, you're going downstairs. So I went downstairs, and I went to the same place where I'd been in the middle of this barrier, looking at what was going on. The man was still out cold. Nothing was being done for him. The policeman came over, and I knew at that point something was going to happen. I pulled out my camera, and I snapped his picture. And he had fury on his face. I put it back into my pocket, because I didn't want him to be able to grab it easily. I thought, if he grabs it from my pocket, I'll have some kind of case. He didn't do that. He held back. I could see he had great self-control. And he said to me, now you're getting arrested. Oh, no, he said, now you're going to jail. And within seconds, there were 3 police around me. They had twisted my arms up, they took away my bags, and they started dragging me away. Now, I should mention that part of what was going on in my head while I was watching this man, I had been reading, and I'm still reading, Robert J. Lifton's book, The Nazi Doctors. I don't know if anybody has read that, about the early euthanasia, well, partly it's about the early euthanasia program, which then leads into the gas chambers. And there was a whole program where the hospitals, it was all secret, and the hospitals were told that they had to neglect certain people deliberately, mentally ill people, all various, and other undesirables such as Jews. And I'm thinking to myself, could there be some kind of program here where certain, minorities and so on and homeless people are being deliberately neglected by the hospitals? I was very worried about this man. So anyway, they're dragging me, and I said to myself, I'm going to make as much noise as possible, even if I humiliate myself totally. So I started screaming, help, help. And one of the police twisted my arm up even more, and he said, play the game, play the game. I said, this is not a game. And then I said, and I was talking to the homeless people, I said, this is what the Nazis did, meaning they arrested people for no reason. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of thing the Nazis did, right? They arrested people for no reason. And the same police officer said to me, if you talk about Nazis, you're really going to get it. And then they dragged me into this MTA office where there's this cell, this jail cell. They said, all right, put your hands against the wall, we're going to frisk you. I said, for what? They said, to see if you have weapons. I said, are you kidding? I'm completely nonviolent. It's on the record. I'm totally against violence. And they said, well, look at all the layers of clothing you have. You may have a weapon there and all this. So I pulled up all my clothes down to my camisole. I said, look, this is what's here. There's nothing. They backed off. I don't know why, but they backed off. They put me into a cell. I was in this cell, tiny, about this big, and there was a bench there, and nothing else. And I started getting claustrophobic, and I got very frightened because I thought, this is so arbitrary. What did I do? And I said, please let me go. I haven't done anything. Please let me go. And at that point, the main officer who had been harassing me said, you won't be here very long, but we have to ask you some questions. You have to be examined by an EMT person. And I didn't say anything, but I thought, and I said, why? Oh, I did say why, and he said, to see if you have to go to Bellevue. Okay, so then, I don't know, there were various other things. I started getting diarrhea, and he let me go to the bathroom and all this. But eventually, the EMT guy showed up, and he said, the first question he asked was, do you think the Nazis are going to get you? That was his first question. And I said, what kind of question is that? And he looked up at the other one, the main officer, as if he didn't understand why I was saying that. And the officer, and then he said to me, well, the officers have said that you were screaming about Nazis. He said, why don't you tell me what happened? So I explained what happened with the other homeless man and so on. And I didn't I didn't say anything about my suspicions. But I just said, I was concerned about a fellow homeless person. And he said, well, why were you arrested? And I said, well, I guess the official charge, as far as I understand it, was disorderly conduct. At which point the police officer stepped forward and said, you're not being officially charged with anything. So then I said, well, then I don't know why I'm here. I really don't understand. And so then the EMT guy said, well, if you were screaming about Nazis, don't you think that's a reason to arrest someone? And I said, well, I wasn't screaming about Nazis. I said, I said this, that this is what the Nazis did, meaning they arrested people for no reasons. And I did that only after they began dragging me to the jail. So at that point, he's totally confused, and he takes the officer outside and talks to him for a very long time. Then they come back, and anyway, that was more or less the way it went. And I had to answer some silly forms, and I was eventually released. I'm trying to